What if the forest could think? Not with neurons, but with roots. Beneath the quiet soil, billions of filaments whisper in the dark, trading signals, sugars, and memories of ancient rains. What if thought wasn't trapped inside the skull, but scattered across the veins of the earth? In the songs of coral, the spiral of slime molds, the shimmering logic of leaves. Tonight, we step into a hidden intelligence, one that breathes in silence. The science of the living network. The revelation didn't come from mystics, but from microscopes. In the early 1990s, in the forests of British Columbia, a group of ecologists began to trace invisible threads running beneath the soil. They weren't roots. They weren't worms. They were something else. An underground web linking every tree, every shrub, every blade of grass. They called it mycelium, a living fabric made of microscopic fungal filaments known as hyphae. Under the forest floor, these threads stretch for miles, forming dense webs as complex as any brain. 1 teaspoon of soil may contain several miles of these fibers, each one pulsing with life, with information. Through this network, carbon flows. When one tree receives more sunlight, it shares a portion of its sugar with its shaded neighbors. When insects attack, warning signals travel through the underground highways, urging distant trees to prepare their defenses. This hidden conversation reshaped everything we thought we knew about trees. They were not silent statues, but participants in a slow, collective mind. A kind of botanical internet, later called the Wood Wide Web. Researchers mapped the nodes and hubs of this living network. They discovered that large ancient mother trees acted like central routers, feeding the young, protecting the weak, distributing resources with uncanny precision. Cut one of these elders down, and dozens of smaller trees begin to starve. Each tip of a root, each filament of fungus, is both independent and connected. A neuron in the slow, silent intelligence of life. The pattern mirrors the human brain. The same branching geometries appear again and again. In neurons, in rivers, in lightning, in lungs, and in this underground consciousness that breathes through the earth itself. To the untrained eye, fungi seem humble, decays engineers, but they are the architects of ecosystems. Without them, soil would be sterile. Trees would suffocate beneath their own fallen leaves, and life as we know it would collapse. Every step you take in a forest presses against billions of microscopic bridges, carrying messages between species. When a root meets a hypha, they exchange more than nutrients. They exchange trust. A biochemical pact written in carbon and in time. The mycelial web doesn't belong to any one organism. It belongs to life itself. a decentralized intelligence that operates without hierarchy, without command. No brain, no center, only connection. And through connection, awareness. This discovery shook biology, philosophy, even the language of science. What if communication and cooperation are not the exception in nature, but the rule? The forest behaves like a community of cells, each tree a heartbeat, each fungus a synapse. Together, they form a memory, a slow collective thought stretching across centuries. When lightning strikes or drought strikes, the memory remains. The forest remembers where water once flowed, which roots survived, and how to recover. This isn't intelligence in the human sense. It's something older, more patient. An intelligence of patterns, not of plans. Beneath every forest floor, beneath your own footsteps, lies a network so vast that if we could see it, the ground would glow like a constellation of light. And somewhere, within that glow, life is listening. Life is learning. Life is thinking without a brain. When biology meets philosophy. For centuries, we believed that thought belonged to us alone, that the human mind was the summit of evolution, a flame lit only once, in our skulls. But as science peered deeper into the microscopic world, the line between intelligence and instinct began to blur. Life, it seemed, had been thinking all along. A slime mold, for instance, can solve a maze. It finds the shortest path between two food sources without a single neuron. If you divide it in two, each half continues the search, and when they meet again, they share what they've learned. An amoeba can remember where it once encountered toxins and avoid that place for days afterwards. No brain, no memory cells, just a living pattern learning through experience. What then is intelligence? Is it the ability to reason, to plan, to imagine, to dream? Or is it something deeper? A universal tendency of life to sense, adapt, and remember. Perhaps thought is not a structure, but a rhythm, a pulse of perception echoing through every form of life. Every cell responds to its environment. Every colony, from ants to coral reefs, organizes itself to survive. Each living system, no matter how simple, contains the logic of awareness, the ability to sense change and adjust to it. If intelligence is the capacity to learn, then learning is everywhere. Molecules learn how to bind. Cells learn how to divide. Organisms learn how to live together. The philosopher Henri Bergson once said, "Intelligence, in its origin, is the faculty of making tools." But the first tools of life were not stone and metal. They were enzymes, membranes, mitochondria, tiny instruments of survival and cooperation. A cell is not a thing. It is a conversation. It listens, it answers, it negotiates. Its tool is adaptation. its material, the universe itself. The further we look, the harder it becomes to draw the line between the living and the thinking. Where does instinct end and imagination begin? Is a bee thinking as it calculates the angle of the sun to find its way home? Is a tree planning as it diverts nutrients to its offspring? Or are these words simply too small to hold what life is doing? Perhaps consciousness did not emerge suddenly but gradually, like dawn light creeping across a sleeping world. From single cells that sensed and moved, to organisms that felt and chose, to beings like us, who can reflect and ask why. The roots of thought may reach much deeper than the human mind. They may run through every living thing, woven through evolution like mycelial threads through soil. We are accustomed to seeing evolution as a struggle, a war of all against all. But beneath that surface, another story unfolds. One of cooperation, of alliances, of symbioses. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells, were once free bacteria that chose to live inside others. Their merger created complex life. Every breath you take is a continuation of that ancient agreement. So when we say that life learns, perhaps it is not a metaphor. Perhaps evolution itself is a vast, distributed intelligence, a memory written in DNA, refined by every generation. We are not separate from this process. We are its expression. Our thoughts, our language, our philosophies are the forest finally speaking of itself. For every neuron that fires, 1 billion years of adaptation echo behind it. Each idea, each dream, is a ripple on the surface of a much older consciousness. The philosopher Spinoza wrote that mind and body are one and the same thing, conceived under different attributes. Perhaps the same can be said of life and thought. The body of life is matter. The mind of life is evolution. And when we think, we are not breaking away from nature. We are nature becoming aware of itself. Look closely at a leaf, at its veins branching like rivers, at the pattern of your lungs, mirroring the structure of trees, at lightning flashing through clouds like neurons firing in a cosmic brain. These repetitions are not coincidence. They are the syntax of life, a language written in pattern and proportion. To study biology, then, is to study philosophy made flesh. Each organism is an answer to a question the universe once asked itself. The amoeba asks, "How can I survive?" The tree asks, "How can I reach the sun?" The human asks, "Why do I exist?" Different scales of the same inquiry, the same intelligence, wearing different faces. We imagine thought as a privilege, but perhaps it is a responsibility to continue the dialogue that began long before us. Every breath we take, every act of awareness, is a thread woven into the fabric of the earth's mind. And so, when biology meets philosophy, it does not create contradiction. It completes a circle. The mind we use to study life is the same mind that life used to create us. We are the question, and we are also the answer. The secret languages of life. Life speaks. It has always spoken. But for most of our history, we have not known how to listen. We thought language was sound, the domain of tongues and voices. But language is older than words. It was born in chemistry, in movement, in rhythm. A dolphin speaks in echoes. A bee dances in spirals. A forest exhales invisible molecules of warning and affection. Every living being, in its own way, is a sentence in the great conversation of Earth. When biologists began to measure the electrical pulses in plants, they were astonished. When a leaf is cut, tiny surges of voltage ripple through the stem, and neighboring plants react, closing their pores, stiffening their cells, as if bracing for pain. A wounded tree sends alarm through the air. Minutes later, a distant tree begins to prepare its defenses. Across the canopy, unseen signals travel in silence, a chorus without sound. In the ocean, coral colonies share messages of stress. When the water warms, they release chemical cries that summon microscopic allies, symbiotic algae that can cool and feed them. Each coral reef is a network of cooperation, a community of voices humming below the surface. And beneath the soil, fungal threads carry even more intimate whispers. Not only between trees, but between species, even between kingdoms of life. If a plant is sick, its neighbors know. If it thrives, others follow. These exchanges are not simple reactions. They are relationships. A conversation written in sugars, enzymes, and light. We often imagine communication as a tool, something life invented to survive. But perhaps it is the other way around. Perhaps survival itself is the byproduct of communication. To live is to be in dialogue. When we listen closely, we find the same principle in every form. Cells talk through chemical signals. Birds sing to mark not territory, but connection, a declaration of presence. Even bacteria swarm in harmony, adjusting their numbers and behavior through a language called quorum sensing. Life organizes itself through conversation. No central command, no leader, just messages, repeated and refined until they become order. In this, biology begins to resemble philosophy. For what is meaning if not the shared vibration between two minds? When a forest breathes, it is not merely producing oxygen. It is shaping the atmosphere for others. Invisible sentences written in gas and wind. We live inside these messages. Every breath you take contains the exhalations of trees, the sighs of plankton, the residue of volcanic songs. The air is not empty. It is language in suspension. The philosopher Martin Buber once said, "All real living is meeting. Perhaps all real being is communicating. To exist is to answer, and to be answered in return. Even silence has its dialect, the stillness between two heartbeats, the pause before a predator moves, the waiting of a seed before rain. All are forms of listening. For most of our history, we imagined ourselves apart from this orchestra. We believed we were the only ones with voices. But our words are latecomers in a dialogue that began billions of years ago. Life was speaking long before we could form a single sound. It spoke through color, to attract, to warn, to seduce, through vibration, to sense, to echo, to feel, through pattern, the spots of a leopard, the fractal lines of a leaf, the synchronized flight of birds across the dusk. Every pattern carries information. Every gesture means something to someone. The language of life is not spoken, it is shared. It flows through touch, through scent, through resonance. It crosses boundaries we once thought absolute. When we realize this, communication itself becomes sacred. To listen, truly listen, is to rejoin the conversation of the world. A human speaking to a tree is not a dreamer, but a translator. A scientist studying birdsong is not measuring data, but eavesdropping on poetry. The more we learn about nature's languages, the more we see our own reflected within them. We speak in vibrations of air. Trees speak in vibrations of light. The earth speaks in the slow grammar of growth. All of it, every pulse, every pattern, is one continuous sentence. Life talking to itself through infinite forms. And perhaps what we call consciousness is simply the awareness of this conversation. The moment the universe realizes it has been speaking all along. The order hidden in chaos. From the smallest cell to the vastness of the cosmos, a single truth echoes again and again. There is order hidden inside what we call chaos. We once believed that the universe was random, a swirling accident of matter and chance. But the deeper science looks, the more it finds rhythm where we expected noise, and patterns where we imagined disorder. Zoom in, and the spiral of a snail's shell mirrors the spiral of a hurricane. Zoom out, and galaxies turn like seashells caught in infinite tide. The same curve, the same proportion, the same invisible mathematics. This symmetry is not imposed from above. It emerges from within. Life does not follow a blueprint. It invents its own geometry as it grows. Every snowflake, every coral, every lung is the result of countless small decisions, each guided by simple rules repeated over time. From simplicity, complexity is born. Scientists call this self-organization. It is how order arises spontaneously, without a designer, without a command. A pattern repeats, adjusts, adapts, until beauty emerges from the unknown. The philosopher Spinoza once wrote, "God and nature are one." Perhaps what he saw was this: the divine as the law of recursion, the endless returning of form within form. The river carves itself like a vein. The lightning splits the sky like a root. The neuron fires like a storm. And in the rhythm of these reflections, we glimpse a silent intelligence, not outside the world, but inside its very structure. This order is not mechanical, it is alive. Chaos, it seems, is not the enemy of life, it is its teacher. When water freezes into ice, the molecules align themselves in crystalline balance. When flocks of birds turn in the sky, each one follows only its neighbor, yet together they create art, an ever-changing symmetry without a leader. What guides them? No plan, no command, only the flow of attention, the dance of cause and effect, the instinctive harmony of shared existence. We tend to think of intelligence as control, to organize, to predict, to master. But life's intelligence works differently. It thrives on uncertainty. It learns through failure. It finds stability not by resisting change, but by weaving change into its fabric. Order, in this sense, is not the opposite of chaos. It is the pattern chaos makes when it learns to breathe. In every storm, there is a shape. In every random motion, a hidden rhythm. In every fall of dice, a memory of the universe playing with itself. The mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot once described the fractal, a shape that repeats itself endlessly at different scales. The same principle governs clouds, mountains, ferns, blood vessels. The closer you look, the more the pattern reveals itself. Fractals are nature's signature, infinite complexity born from the simplest rules. A leaf unfurls like a galaxy. A coastline mirrors the edge of a lung. A thought travels through neurons like lightning through a storm. We are surrounded by the proof that life is not random, but rhythmic. And perhaps that rhythm is the true language of consciousness. To understand this order, we must learn to see differently. The human mind loves boundaries, this or that, form or void, chaos or order. But the universe does not obey such lines. It dances between them. What appears chaotic on one scale reveals harmony on another. The turbulence of clouds creates the balance of weather. The death of a star creates the seeds of new worlds. Creation and destruction, chaos and order, exist not as enemies, but as partners in an eternal exchange. Life itself is the child of their marriage. From the random collision of molecules came the first cell. From the noise of mutation came the harmony of evolution. From chaos, consciousness. It may be that the universe is not a machine at all, but a thought in motion, a vast experiment in learning. Each explosion, each birth, each heartbeat and dying star, a fragment of the same unfolding equation. To some this sounds mystical, to others it sounds inevitable. For what is science if not the attempt to translate mystery into pattern? And what is philosophy if not the recognition that the pattern itself is mysterious? The truth may be both. Reality may not be a static design but an improvisation, a jazz of matter and meaning. The rules remain simple, yet their combinations are infinite. Perhaps that is why the world never repeats itself. Each snowflake, each life, each mind is a unique variation on a universal theme. And in that diversity, the cosmos continues its self-portrait. Every living being, every atom, is a brushstroke on the same invisible canvas. We are not spectators of this order. We are expressions of it. The geometry of the galaxy lives in our breath, in our thoughts, in our veins. To study chaos is to study the mind of life. To study order is to study the heart of creation. In truth, they are one and the same, two faces of the same eternal motion. And if we listen closely, beneath the noise of chance and change, we can almost hear it. The quiet hum of the universe organizing itself into meaning. The breath of consciousness. If life learns, remembers, and reacts, where does mind begin? For centuries, we believed consciousness appeared suddenly, a spark struck by evolution in the human brain. But perhaps awareness did not begin with us. Perhaps it has been breathing since the first cell took its first breath. Biologist Lynn Margulis proposed that evolution was not a war, but a conversation. That every complex being was born through cooperation, not competition. Mitochondria, the tiny engines inside our cells, were once free-living bacteria. Instead of fighting, they joined. They chose symbiosis, and that union gave rise to all animal life. Every breath you take is the continuation of that ancient pact. When your lungs fill, it is not only oxygen you receive, it is history. It is the memory of cooperation written into flesh. Perhaps consciousness was never invented by the brain. Perhaps it was inherited. A ripple that began billions of years ago when separate lives decided to live together. The will to connect may be the first spark of awareness, because to connect, one must sense, one must respond, one must recognize the other. A single cell senses the warmth of light, the pull of gravity, the taste of a nutrient. It turns toward what sustains it. That turning, that choice, is already a question answered by life. From that faint perception to the complexity of the human mind, the same thread continues. Life observing itself, refining its perception, becoming the mirror it once could not imagine. Consciousness may not be a staircase we climb, but a sea in which we rise together. Every species, every system, a different wave of awareness on the same ocean. When an octopus solves a puzzle, when a crow hides a tool for tomorrow, when a forest shifts its chemistry at sunset, something like thought is moving there, a slow collective breath through time. The philosopher Teilhard de Chardin called this the noosphere, the sphere of mind growing around the earth, woven from every spark of perception that life has ever known. Humanity in that vision is not the crown of evolution, but its voice, the place where the cosmos begins to speak aloud. Yet we forget how much of that voice is borrowed. Our neurons, our senses, our dreams, are ancient designs repurposed. We are a choir of forgotten ancestors still singing inside our blood. Every impulse in the brain echoes the rhythm of older lives, cells that once drifted in the sea, bacteria that learned to share instead of devour. Even now, your body is not one being. It is an ecosystem, trillions of microbes, each with its own small decisions, its own awareness of balance. You are not a single mind, but a parliament of life in constant negotiation. So where does you end and the rest of life begin? If every breath you take is exchanged with a tree, If every heartbeat echoes bacteria within you, then individuality itself may be the illusion. Consciousness may be less a possession and more a participation, a field we enter by existing. The mystic might call it spirit. The scientist calls it the biosphere. Both may be describing the same truth. A network of awareness spanning every scale, from the trembling of an atom to the birth of a thought. Life seems to seek awareness the way a flame seeks air. It stretches, expands, consumes, and in doing so, illuminates. Even death feeds it. The fallen leaf becomes soil. The soil becomes root. The root becomes breath again. Awareness recycles itself endlessly, learning through transformation. If evolution is the memory of life, then consciousness is its dream. A dream the universe keeps having of itself. And so we arrive here, breathing in the same rhythm that once stirred the first tide pools. Every inhale an ancient story. Every exhale a return to the whole. To be alive is to be aware. To be aware is to be connected. And to be connected is to share in the great respiration of the cosmos. When you breathe, you are not filling your lungs with air. You are touching the lungs of stars, the ghosts of forests, the quiet memory of oceans. Awareness is not confined to the skull. It circulates in blood, in wind, in time. It moves through you as easily as it moves through the roots of trees, the wings of birds, the turning of galaxies. Consciousness, then, is not the crown of life, but its breath. It does not belong to us. It moves through us, the universe inhaling and exhaling, dreaming and awakening, forever. The whisper of life. So what is intelligence really? Maybe not the power to think, but the power to connect. We search for meaning in the mind, but perhaps meaning lives in the space between minds, in the exchange of breath, in the flow of water, in the pulse of countless invisible relationships. Every organism, every pattern is both a question and an answer. A coral reef asks the sea how to live. A mountain asks gravity how to stand. A tree asks the wind how to sing. The forest thinks. The coral dreams. Even silence speaks in its own language. We are not above this intelligence. We are born from it. It breathes through us. It moves our thoughts. It binds us in ways we barely sense. The philosopher Alan Watts once said, "You are something that the universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is something the ocean is doing." Perhaps consciousness is not in us, but around us, between us, through us. When you walk through a forest, the forest is also walking through you. The oxygen in your lungs was the forest's exhalation just moments ago. Your breath is its return. A conversation as old as time. All life is built on this reciprocity. No being exists alone. The cell depends on the sun. The sun depends on the balance of space. Space depends on the gravity of every atom that fills it. To exist is to participate. To live is to join the dialogue of being. In this light, even death changes meaning. It is not an ending, but a redistribution, a returning of awareness to the whole. The tree that falls becomes soil. The soil becomes seed. The seed becomes light once again. Nothing is lost, only transformed. This is how the universe speaks, not in words, but in transformation. Each birth, each decay, each spark of curiosity is part of the same eternal conversation, the cosmos learning its own voice. And when we listen, truly listen, we hear it everywhere, in wind, in waves, in heartbeat, in silence. It speaks in atoms, and it speaks through us.